Hello and welcome to On Wisconsin Workforce. I'm Caleb Frostman, your host and Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development. I'm here to talk about workforce development and economic development here in our great state of Wisconsin. Today on Wisconsin Workforce, I'll be talking with Governor Tony Evers about his first 8 months in office. I'll also discuss Workforce Development Month and apprenticeship with DWD's Division of Employment and Training Administrator Chytania Brown, job numbers with Chief Economist Dennis Winters, and the goals and dreams of 12-year-old Harrison. We'll begin with Governor Tony Evers to discuss workforce development and his first 8 months in office. Governor, we're really excited to have you on our podcast this month. I'll kick things off with the question, what are you most proud of at this point in your term?
Well, I'd say the thing that I'm most proud of is that we were able really to work hard to put a budget together that's reflective of the people of Wisconsin. Spent a lot of time gathering information, going out on the road. I know members of the cabinet participated in that. We had legislators involved, but at the end of the day, we were able to actually listen. I think you can learn some things by listening. And so I'm proud that we were able to take that information and put it in the context of a budget and put those policy levers in place in front of the legislature. So I'd say that, and also, frankly, I'm extraordinarily pleased and proud of the group of people we put together to run our agencies, and including you.
Well, there you go. I didn't prompt him to say that. That's not on the screen.
Yeah, and all the other folks, and visiting many of these state agencies and having a chance to interact directly with. We're one of the largest, if not the largest, employer in the state of Wisconsin, and having the opportunity to have good discussions with people that are doing the work for the people of Wisconsin has just been outstanding.
Well, that's great. Going back to the budget, what are your thoughts on how the budget process played out? And I think, what are some of the items that you're particularly proud of that were in the final version?
Yeah, I would say the particularly proud of is that we accomplished the things we talked about to some extent. We set a real high bar. We, as I said before, we had a people's budget that reflected what the people of Wisconsin were talking about, mainly 3 areas: making sure that we have good infrastructure, making sure that we have adequate and affordable and accessible health care, and we have a great public education system. So we set a high bar going in, and we worked with the legislature as much as possible to have a good outcome. And at the end of the day, we got a lot what we tried to accomplish. We got a large increase in funding for schools, not nearly enough. We have good opportunity to have good infrastructure in the state, good resources around that, and we made some headway as it related to health care. Now, I will tell you that we've got a long way to go, but the budget set a higher bar this time, and we have a good foundation for the future. So a lot of people are interested in having me veto the entire budget, and took a look at that. And even though it was something that we considered, as strongly considered, but at the end of the day, I just couldn't. I couldn't do that. We have to reach common ground at some point in time, and that was the time.
So as we look at our workforce programming and discuss workforce initiatives, we track a lot of different rates and metrics, and one of those is the unemployment rate. So we've had an unemployment rate that's been considerably lower than the national average for some time, but we find in the data and in discussions that many Wisconsin workers are underemployed, or in a lot of cases, they're discouraged and not even participating in the labor force. So, with your vision, how do you think we can best support those workers in Wisconsin's workforce in general?
Yeah, and I'll just start off by telling you a campaign story. Anytime you run for any office, and especially one that's higher profile like governor, everybody wants to challenge your data, and that happens regularly. But the one piece of data that was never challenged, and because I believe it's accurate, is sometime last summer, the United Way released a study on that showed that there's about 840,000 families in the state of Wisconsin that are, people are working 1 or 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs, and they can barely afford the basics. And that's a family of 4, so that's over 3 million people, and that are either living in families or are breadwinners for their families. And clearly, that tells you something. They couldn't, they could barely afford rent, they could barely afford childcare, they could barely afford making sure that they're putting food on the table. And so the important thing, and I think that's what you're getting at, is that we have an extremely talented workforce that is, frankly, I believe, many people are underpaid, and we have to do things differently. And the pieces are in place, and certainly in the Department of Workforce Development, the issue of the training programs. We can't be more proud of the work that we're doing around apprenticeships. And we're also looking at issues around misclassification of jobs that happen, that gives some businesses a heads up, a leg up over others, and creates equality issues. So and at the end of the day, I also think we need a higher minimum wage. That's not going to solve all the problems, but it sends a message that is important for us to send, is that yes, we have a good, skilled workforce in the state of Wisconsin, but we also expect them to be able, if you work hard, you work 40 hours a week, you should be able to have a family supporting job. And that's not the case for a bunch of people here in Wisconsin. We can do better, and more training, focusing on apprenticeships and those trades that frankly pay more, and increasing the minimum wage and removing barriers that create this inequality, I think, are things that we can all take on.
As we progress kind of beyond the budget cycle, what are some of the items that you really want to continue fighting for going forward?
Yeah, and there's several, but I'll just say up front that legislation that did away with prevailing wage a couple years ago, I think, was mistaken. We find that that program and that requirement around prevailing wage did not only give us higher wages, but it kept jobs in Wisconsin that we're not having anymore. So prevailing wage and right to work are two important things that I think we need to reconsider. When they were passed, I don't think we listened well to not only the workers that were impacted by that, but I don't think we listened well to the employers that wanted to keep those requirements in place. High quality sometimes comes with a cost, and that was a cost worth having, and I just don't think we've gained as a state around that. So we'll continue to fight around that and the issue of minimum wage. But we also have to make sure that we continue to invest Wisconsin dollars in making sure that our workforce is the best trained in the nation. I think we do a good job. I know we have to continue that and not back off from that.
I think you and I are similar in this way, that we've both kind of lived in different places in Wisconsin. I've been in Stevens Point, Green Bay, Milwaukee, Madison, Sturgeon Bay, and back to Madison, and you've been in a couple different...
Couldn't hold a job?
Something like that. Well, I got to talk to the workforce guy to get that down. But
That's right. Well, I did the same thing. I've been all over the state, and people will ask me that, so you couldn't keep a job.
No, well, you've done okay for yourself, I think.
Yes,
you're good. On that note, Wisconsin is a really unique state with large rural areas as well as major urban centers, and the needs of those residents can be similar, but they can also vary significantly. And so moving forward, what are some of the policies that you're championing that will support both rural and urban constituents?
Yeah, and that's that's an excellent way of talking about it, because we do have high poverty in rural areas and urban areas. They look different. They somewhat look the same. But what I'm encouraging, and you know this as a member of our cabinet, is that we're encouraging people to connect the dots. And I can think back to my work as state superintendent. Yes, it's important to make sure that the education system is sound, but if there's not affordable housing, if there's not adequate transportation, if there's not good health care, all those things absolutely play, child care, all those things play a role in having kids succeed educationally. But it's also in reverse too. You have to have a good education system in order to have the other things in place. But we have lots of things as a state that we do well individually, but if we don't connect the dots, and affordable housing is something that impacts rural areas just like it does urban areas. And so I think the big buckets are the same. I think how we address those within those buckets, how affordable housing look in Crandon as versus Milwaukee. I think it will look different, but it's still around affordable housing so that families aren't forced to live great distance from their workplaces or from schools or anything else. And so the idea, if we want our state to be economically strong and to make sure that we have a continued good workforce, we have to connect those dots.
That's great. Well, moving from Wisconsin to international discussions, you're heading on your first trade mission to Japan in September. What are you excited about regarding that trip, and how do these trade missions impact the everyday Wisconsinite?
Yeah, and believe me, they're a lot of work for everybody, but the notion that we are a insular company or country or state is it's just not true anymore. This is a global environment, and so whatever I can do as governor to make sure that we're expanding markets for Wisconsin products, I will do. And this is one of those opportunities. Japan is, I think, one of the few countries we haven't insulted lately, and so I'm looking forward to going there and working with the business community there to make sure that if people want to expand, if business people want to expand their markets, that we're able to do that. And that plays out in rural and urban Wisconsin. People may be surprised at the type of companies that either we buy products from Japan, but also the number of companies that are Japan owned that are right here in the state. And so there's lots of good reasons to encourage that growth, and so that makes it better for our economy and better for our workforce.
Speaking of trade, a lot's been said recently about the tariffs and their impact on the Wisconsin economy. We've seen farmers, truck drivers, manufacturers, and many others kind of bearing the burden of these bizarre trade wars. What are your thoughts on these current trade wars, and what, if anything, can Wisconsin do as a state to help some of our industry sectors that are struggling as a result?
Yeah, and that is a problem. Unfortunately, we have leadership at the national level that engages in trade wars via tweet, and that I understand the end analysis. Whether it's China or some other country that we're fighting with over trade issues, that we can maybe find a better way to do it. But the process itself just sucks. I don't know how else to put it. We have businesses making decisions based upon some tweet that was done at 3 a.m. We just can't survive that way. We have, whether it's farmers, truck drivers, manufacturers, it doesn't make any difference. This impacts the state of Wisconsin, and we need to have open markets. We need to be able to trade equally and fairly, but I don't believe the process that the president's using is particularly helpful to that. In fact, I would say it's working in the wrong direction. So that's one of the reasons I'm glad to be going to Japan, because we are in good trading partners with them, and we can at least make some headway there.
Great. We just recently had our first meeting of the Joint Enforcement Task Force on Payroll Fraud and Worker Misclassification, and you were able to attend and provide your vision for that council. Can you share that vision for our listeners?
Sure, and we can look at it from two angles. One is if you're a worker in the state and your competitor, your job is based on some assumptions on your skills, and when employers misclassify people, that just goes out the window. And we have a situation where some businesses are getting an unfair competitive advantage over other businesses because they classify their workers in a different way than their competitors do. And so in order for us to maintain high quality in the state, we have to deal with that issue. And we can't have the business sector taking advantage of this. We have to make sure that people are classified appropriately, and that plays out in some very interesting and strange ways. Frankly, if you're misclassifying an employee, the employer may not be making the required contribution to either workers' comp or unemployment compensation plans, and that gives them a competitive advantage because others that are doing the right thing are paying that. They should pay that because those are costs that need to be shared with employers. But so by misclassifying them and deliberately doing so, that's just something we have to address. And so in order for us to maintain the highest quality workforce that we have in the state of Wisconsin, but also make sure that people are competing fairly for business in Wisconsin, and that we're having those businesses paying their fair share of supporting mechanisms when people either get hurt or are unemployed. We have to level that playing field, and that's essentially to obey the law. Pretty simple.
That's great. That's a great group. We should have some good findings there. We're looking forward to September for a lot of reasons, but mainly because it's Workforce Development Month. And I often say, and I know I think we feel similarly on this, that workforce and economic development really go together. So we're curious for our listeners to hear, what are some of the policies you wish to pursue that are going to help support Wisconsin's workers and really drive economic growth for our state?
Yeah, and I'll use this from a little different angle. Certainly, I believe the issues around prevailing wage and right to work are important, and workforce training and apprenticeships are all important things. But one of the things that we failed to do in the budget was to expand Medicaid to the state of Wisconsin. We're as a state, we could save over $3 million like that tomorrow by doing that, and also bring in $1.6 billion of additional revenue. Now, that creates a different dynamic for the state. That money can be spent on all sorts of things, such as workforce development and bringing new businesses to the state and having greater economic vitality. But also for the individual workers in the state, if we take Medicaid expansion, that will, first of all, give 82,000 people that don't have health insurance now some coverage, Medicaid coverage, but it also will lower costs from private insurance and also union insurance plans that some people have bargained. So it's in order for us to have a healthy workforce and one that has accessible and affordable health care, we need to take that. And that is a political issue. We have two people in the state of Wisconsin that if they called for a vote tomorrow in the legislature, I think we'd pass that, but we can't. And so I believe Medicaid expansion is really important for all our workers in the state of Wisconsin, whether they have insurance or not. It's going to be better by doing that. The other push is we will continue to support the Department of Workforce Development in the issues of making sure that we have good training programs, that we have good apprenticeship programs, that we continue to have, in my opinion, the best system of preparing workers in the country. We need to continue that. We need to invest in it, and so I think the future looks bright.
And then you mentioned apprenticeship and unemployment insurance. Throughout Wisconsin's history, we've led on many issues. We were the first state in the country to have apprenticeship, an unemployment insurance program, and workers' compensation. We've got a lot to be proud of as a progressive policy incubator. What policy or program born in this state makes you feel the proudest?
Especially of those three, I would say the apprenticeship programs. I think all three are great examples of Wisconsin's great history of supporting workers and supporting economic development. But the apprenticeship programs, for me, I think we just have to be really proud of the fact that it's widespread. We are first in the nation. We have youth apprenticeships. And also, a lot of people don't realize that our unions across the state, whether it's carpenters or electrical workers or others that have apprenticeship programs, pipe trades, it shows me that not only are these union employers and union workers, but they also they're paying for apprenticeships to make sure that their union brothers and sisters are actually continuing to learn while they're still working, and they're making the industry stronger and stronger and stronger. And so I think the apprenticeship program is unique here in Wisconsin, and we need to really understand how it is part of our fabric, and that's why I think it's of the three the most important.
We agree that apprenticeship is wildly important and impressive, and it's a great return on investment for employers and for the greater community, and that whole learn and earn concept is something that the state can be really proud of. So, well, thank you, Governor, for taking the time today. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep.
Now that we've talked with Governor Evers, I'm joined by Chytania Brown, Administrator of the Division of Employment Training here at DWD. Chytania, welcome to the show. What kind of programming does DWD's Division of Employment and Training offer to help support existing workers and workers who are looking to break into the workforce?
The Division of Employment and Training has several programs that help support workers at any point in their careers, from high school students to experienced workers looking for change. Our area job centers are equipped with career counselors who can help individuals discover their next career paths. Our staff at the job centers help individuals with resumes, job applications, interview skills, as well as making connections to area employers or local training programs. And one of our most successful programs for supporting workers in their career development is our apprenticeship programs. We have both youth and registered apprenticeship programs. Our youth apprenticeship programs provide on-the-job training and related instruction to Wisconsin high schools, juniors, and seniors. It gives high school students a chance to explore careers firsthand while trying out occupations before they commit to a school or full-time career in something. And then we have our registered apprenticeship program. It's a time-tested training method for adults to train on the job and complete related instruction while getting paid.
That's great. I know this administration and folks throughout the state are big believers in the earn and learn model, that if you can be learning while you're making hopefully a living wage and then make even more when you're done is a pretty fantastic deal. On that note, talking about registered apprenticeship, can you give me a little background and our listeners a little background on how registered apprenticeship got started in Wisconsin, how much it's grown, and then maybe talk about some of the newer initiatives that are aimed at expanding the program in the new industries?
Sure. So Wisconsin is the first state to have registered apprenticeship in the country, starting back in 1911. Wisconsin law in 1911 identified 200 occupations that benefit from apprenticeship training. So over the years, apprenticeship has stayed steady in numbers and in construction and manufacturing sectors. We currently have over 13,000 active apprentices. In the past few years, we've received a number of federal grants, and Wisconsin Apprenticeship has had the opportunity to expand into non-traditional occupations. So some of what we're offering is information technology, healthcare, financial services, and ag, just to name a few of our new sectors. Another initiative that Wisconsin Apprenticeship has started is that we now certify our pre-apprenticeship programs. These programs aim to prepare individuals for careers in occupations such as construction, manufacturing, and agriculture. And one thing that we've also expanded into is our correctional institutions. We have apprenticeships that help prepare men and women for release through the formation of certified pre-apprenticeship programs, as well as registered apprenticeship programs prior to release. So we're really excited about that.
No, it's great. I know when we go and hit the road and talk about what DWD is up to and what our priorities are, we talk a lot about obviously the quantity of jobs and also the quality of jobs. And I think when we speak about apprenticeship, we focus on both of those things, which is great. I think we provide quality living wage work through these earn and learn opportunities, but then also as we try to be more creative and inclusive, looking at that pre-apprenticeship piece and then look at the reentry piece, they're really logical partners for apprenticeship work. And adult registered apprenticeship is one piece of what we do, but Wisconsin's also been a pioneer in youth apprenticeship with the first statewide program back in 1991. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about that program, its goals, and what it's grown into today?
So Wisconsin Act 39 created youth apprenticeship, as you mentioned, back in 1991. And in 2000, Wisconsin enacted a state funding via grant program to local YA consortiums. We started the program in printing and graphic arts with 17 students, and today we offer 11 career clusters representing 55 pathways, registering over 5,000 students per year with more than 3,000 participating YA employers. So we're really excited about youth apprenticeship. Wisconsin Youth Apprenticeship Program is designed to include important features of its registered apprenticeship program. We've created now a bridge from youth apprenticeship to registered apprenticeship. We're just excited about the growth of our youth apprenticeship as well as our growth into new sectors for registered apprenticeship.
That's great. I think when we talk to folks that use youth apprenticeship, employers and consortia and schools, it seems to be a good way for the students to test drive a career and for employers to really get to know some potential employees and learn what their work habits are and instill their values. And it seems to be a pretty good potential pathway between either youth apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship, or whatever that student's next step might be. Awesome. Well, thanks, Chytania. We appreciate it. Next up, I'm joined by Dennis Winters, our Chief Economist here at DWD. Well, Dennis, welcome back to the program. We're excited to have you, as usual. Curious, what did the job numbers look like this month?
Yeah, the July employment numbers showed a slight decrease over the month from June. Private sector jobs were down about 100 jobs for the month. Total non-farm private sector jobs were up 14,600 year over year. So rolling right along. Construction was higher, manufacturing was off a little bit, retail was off just 300 jobs. So it's a little bit of a wobble, and as we see the trends continue. So, and then on the other side, you have the unemployment rate was up a tick. It was still very low, 2.9% in Wisconsin, and that mimics kind of what happened in the U.S. That went up a tick, 3.7%. And both those rates, they're just off the historic lows. We haven't seen rates like this since the late 90s, and that was a long expansionary period. So we're dealing with numbers that we like.
Well, good. It's very encouraging, and that's a great segue. This past month, we just celebrated the longest economic expansion in history, which must be very exciting for your team. How do we ensure that growth and stability continues to progress moving forward?
The last business cycle has been one real professional interest. We went through, from an economist point of view, we went through a bond consumption investment bubble, that went into a financial meltdown, that went into the Great Recession, and now we're in the longest expansion. So I hope to be teaching 21st century economic history in about 10 years. That would be a fun thing to go through. So,
that would be interesting.
Yeah. But to continue growth, we just need to do what we keep doing, creating jobs, growing income, sustaining consumption. So the consumption is a big part of it. That's 70% of the U.S. economy, and the numbers we've got there on retail sales and consumption spending are the most promising ones we have right now. So that's all good news.
Good. Is that kind of an indicator of consumer confidence if folks continue to consume?
It is. So if they've got job stability and income and earning stability, they're much more confident on what they're doing, paying their bills, and put some savings away, and then keep consuming and build their lifestyle. So that's all good rock base to start.
Oh, good. Well, I think if you end up teaching that 21st century economics, there will probably be a section on tariffs, and there's been a lot of national talk about those lately. Can you explain for our listeners exactly how those work and how they can impact the Wisconsin economy?
Tariffs they're essentially a tax or a fee on the trade of goods and services. So the concept of tariffs is to, in some cases, level the playing field. So economies can compete, and on the other side, it's to kind of tilt the playing field in one way or another, generally in your favor. So in the current application, what we're seeing around is tariffs are being used to square the trade balance. So that's the value of that particular approach is open for discussion. It's kind of open discussion if that's the right way to go about what they consider the cause of what they're trying to do with tariffs. But and the rhetoric around tariffs usually revolves around free trade versus fair trade. Free trade being that everybody's just on the same playing field, and as it goes, and that's fair. The fair trade part comes into it if some government is subsidizing some other industry or something like that, then you want to step in and say, well, if you're going to subsidize this, then we're going to subsidize this. So it can get to be a kind of a tit for tat on the trade sort of thing. So depending on what your viewpoint is and what your reality is and what you're trying to do. Right now, the uncertainty around U.S. trade policy it's causing a lot of angst, around corporate planners as they struggle on capital and product decisions. That's one reason we see capital investment drop. The numbers in the GDP part of it, they're uncertain. Businesses don't like uncertainty, so they're kind of struggling with all of that. And it's an interesting concept. One reason I like economics is that nothing's linear, right? So as you look, you put a tariff on this, and the examples you get, like recent tariffs on steel imports, right? The steel prices have actually gone down, which wasn't supposed to be the case at all, but you kind of dampen demand for the product as it went through. And then you got tariffs on the Chinese products, of course, and they've shifted production. Companies have shifted production to just other low-cost producers. So the one I think is kind of interesting, all the tariffs we've got and the trade wars on the farmers and particularly in soybeans, right, that we're seeing. Well, the other big supplier of soybeans is Brazil.
Interesting.
So right now you're seeing Brazil, clear more land so they can grow more soybeans, so they can take advantage of the tariffs and trade barriers from U.S. soybeans to China.
So they're kind of swooping in and taking advantage of a unique situation.
That's what a sharp person would do.
Well, interesting. So we're here on the Friday before Labor Day, and it's a gorgeous day here in Madison. And I think a lot of families are thinking about this. But in a couple days, students of all ages across the state are going back to school. As we think about workforce development programs for kids that are looking at potentially, tailoring their field of study or preparing for any certain professions, do you see any particularly attractive job opportunities in terms of growth going into the future that students should maybe consider?
Well, yeah, overall, I think there's a great time for young people. I mean, because of our labor supply challenge, right? It's the first time in a long time. Kids can pursue almost any profession they want, right? Find rewards in it. So the high growth areas we see now and in the future are mostly in information technology, healthcare, and human services. But in these days, it's kind of more important about the skills you have than any particular industry that you work in. So, and of course, demand for IT skills, permeates almost any sector in business and that kind of thing. So, but it's most jobs pay well. Most jobs that pay well require some sort of post-secondary education. Mm-hmm. So it might be a company certificate that you've done the training in. It might be going on to college or back to college or apprenticeship training, things like that. Something if you want to get a leg up, you're gonna need more than just high school.
Interesting. Well, speaking of career development and youth starting their trajectory toward whatever career it is they end up working in, did you always want to be an economist? Even back when you were a kid?
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Didn't everybody?
Yeah. Of course.
So, no, I as a kid, I wanted to be a baseball player. So, had a good glove, a strong arm, but kind of lacked a bit of it in the batter's box. So, that shortened up my career quite a bit. And then I liked math and things like that, so I kind of got directed toward engineering. And that was all nice and precision and things like that. And it dawned on me one day for various reasons that I wasn't going to be a top-notch engineer. But so then I found economics, and actually I love it. I always have. My career has been economics, different places, but doing essentially the same thing. And like I say, the biggest thing I like about economics, or the best thing, is nothing's linear. So that whole mindset and thought process fits me much better from going from point A to point B with a solution. It's just I like folding all that stuff over and putting it in the mindset. Yeah, but the truth be told, I always want to be a dancer.
Interesting. Well, the athleticism of a baseball player would work out pretty well. What particular medium?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you all start out with the basics, right? It's all the ballet stuff, but I just love it. It's so much movement. It's graceful. I thought I could do that.
Well, a lot of athletes I know, for the Packer fans listening, I know Reggie White found great value in the balance he attained through ballet, and a lot of Packers during the mid-'90s were into ballet, so you're not alone. And
well, didn't Driver win Dance?
He did. There you go. Yeah, see a
so.
more contemporary example for younger listeners. Well, Dennis, thank you so much for your insights. We always appreciate it, and we'll look forward to talking to you next month.
Great.
Thank you. Finally, I will be talking to 12-year-old Harrison, and he will tell us what he wants to be when he grows up. And Harrison, how old are you?
12.
Okay. And what do you like doing for fun?
Sports.
Okay. Which sports?
Baseball, hockey.
Okay, those are two good ones.
Yeah.
What do you play in baseball? Which position mostly?
Mostly center field, second base, and catcher.
Okay, nice. Catcher's a good position to you learn the game so well playing there. Yeah. How about in hockey?
I play right wing and center.
Okay, that's awesome. What number are you?
3 or 13.
Okay, I like that. And what do you think you want to be when you grow up?
I really want to be a politician.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very cool. What do you think, on a daily basis, what does a politician do as far as daily tasks?
They have to, give, speeches and press conferences, and they have to vote on things.
That is a very accurate portrayal. Do you think you need to go to school or have any specific training to be a politician? Yeah.
I could go to, law school, maybe.
That is true.
Yeah.
I think learning those logic skills and being able to argue with validity is really important. So that could be a good fit. Do you know how long you have to go to school to do that? Do you know if you went to law school? You'd probably have to go to high school, college.
Yeah, that'd probably be like 8 years after high school-ish.
Yeah, ish. Yeah, I think so. I think law school is generally 3 years, but you can do it part-time. So yeah, that's a lot of school. What kind of skills do you think they're training, whether it's a political science degree, or I guess what are some of the skills you think that help a politician be successful?
Like being able to debate, and being able to like agree to disagree, kind of, and like everyone's opinion matters.
Yeah, it's difficult to balance everyone's opinion. People can get pretty fired up, and you got to keep your cool and be well prepared with facts and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What other subjects in school are you a big fan of?
Math and social studies, science.
Those are good. Those are all really good things to be in your background if you do decide to go into politics, because it's good to know how budgets work. It's good to know history, to understand how to best prepare for the future. So I would encourage you to do all those things. That's awesome. And then science, to make sure we understand how natural resource legislation works. So all those things are really important.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in, Harrison. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of On Wisconsin Workforce. If you want to learn more about the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, check out our website at www.dwd.wisconsin.gov. You can also follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn by searching for the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, and you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at WI Workforce. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm Secretary Caleb Frostman, and this is On Wisconsin Workforce.